Good morning. It's Stacy, and we are walking in my shoes. We're going to do boundaries today. It's a Friday all day, and you can tell it's a Friday all day. It's been a Friday all day as we start. Um, First of all, I need to truly apologize to anybody who tried to get in the Zoom meetings. I think we've resolved the problem. There were two meetings scheduled at the same time for whatever reason, one linked to my calendar, and so it just kind of redid it. So that will be fixed today, so we won't have that problem going forward. Um, so I just wanted to apologize to anybody who kind of got caught up in that fiasco. We had a great Zoom meeting, and I will fix it so y'all can get in it next time because this just like I said, I really need to apologize again for that. It is Friday, and we're going to finish up briefly the boundary thing here. We could talk about boundaries for weeks. So, what I decided is that when we're done with the lives this week, we're going to do the more in depth boundaries with some written stuff that kind of goes with it. Those videos will be available on our YouTube channel on Monday. So if you will subscribe to the YouTube channel, we will release them to you on Monday, and the rest of them will post out to everybody else later. You can also get them on our website um, on the later release and all of the written stuff that goes with it. Good morning. Let me just make sure that we're kind of all coming in here. And we're going to talk about, I got to get to my right page of my notes here. We're going to talk about boundaries and kind of finish them up. We talked about why they're important. And now we need to kind of bring them around to building our boundaries. And how do we build those boundaries? Boundaries are not inherited. Boundaries are a learned behavior. So we just don't come out and have boundaries. They're a learned behavior. So they're not something that some people have better than others. They're just something that we learned over time. And our boundaries are always going to change and they're going to evolve as we evolve. So that's just kind of important. Um, the one thing about building boundaries is you got to kind of equate it to building a house. When people talk about building a house, the very first thing they talk about is the floor plan, obviously. But then they run off and they want to pick out paint colors and flooring. Okay, well, all right. But you got to put the foundation in first. The icky stuff has to happen first. The trenching for the water lines or putting in the well or putting in the septic or tying to the septic, all that stuff happens to your yard first, and the footings are dug and the concrete's poured. So all that stuff happens first. It's something that we just do first before we can build this house. So when you're setting boundaries, it's a continual process. And you've got to start small, digging your foundation. And then eventually you'll have be able to pick out your carpet and your paint colors and your hardwood floors and all the important things that we feel are important. But you have to start at the beginning. Um, and boundaries are individual. So just to understand that what works for me in the boundary I have to create for me and my self preservation may not work for you. And this becomes really complicated in a marriage or a relationship because my boundary may not be the same boundary that Carl has. But when he starts to learn my boundaries and I start to learn his boundaries, it works. So you have to be very aware when you set your boundaries that we go and we ask for support and we ask for advice and we ask for help and we ask all this stuff, and people are saying, well, you need to do this, 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 and this. And then it doesn't work. And so we become frustrated. So when you set boundaries, remember they're personal and they're going to evolve and they're about what works for you. So as we finish this up today, we're just going to give some brief overviews. And like I said, this weekend we'll have them on our YouTube for the subscribers early. So you just have to listen to that. So don't start getting this resentment built up because you're trying to follow somebody else's plan and it doesn't work for you. That's real important. Um, this is going to become something that is super hard to grasp, but it happens all the time. When we continuously step into a situation and we take away the consequences, we become the enabler. For everything we do as individuals, we have a consequence. For everything our spouse does, they have a consequence. So even when they're in their PTSD moment, they have that consequence. But when we go in and try to fix them or make excuses for that, we enable that. Now, do we need to be understanding that this is a PTSD moment and this is why? Yes. But we can't take ownership of their PTSD moment. That is in their boundary. So when we go in, and so often we talk about a PTSD moment and bad behavior. And I don't want to sound like we're talking about children here, but this is the analogy people use. A PTSD moment is just that. Bad behavior is something else. And when we go in and make excuses and take away the consequences for the bad behavior, then all we do is enable them. And we get exhausted and we get frustrated. And so there's accountability. So let me give you an example. Why I see this all the time. And when we talk to spouses all the time, they're like, well, he won't do anything around the house. He comes home and he sits in the chair and he plays his video game and I do it all. Yep, there's your problem. If you do it all, there are no consequences for him sitting in the chair and playing a video game. And this happened, this is not a PTSD thing. This happened in when I was married before, and I went to marriage counseling. And my husband at the time had this ability, this habit. It drove me crazy. There were two. One of them was he sat down in the chair and he took his socks off and he set them next to the chair. Okay, he wouldn't pick them up and put them in the hamper. I had to do it. It drove me nuts. The second thing he did was when we'd eat, and at the time we weren't eating at a table, so he was eating in the chair, watching TV or whatever, he'd set his plate next to him. And when he got done eating, the plate stayed there. It didn't get carried to the kitchen. I mean, I don't mind washing the dishes, but I don't think I should have to carry a grown man's plate to the kitchen. So when I went and I was talking to the counselor said, it's not his problem, it's yours. I said, what do you mean it's my problem? He's leaving his dirty sock, he's leaving his plate. What do you mean it's my problem? He said, the dirty socks aren't bothering him. The plate is not bothering him. It bothers you because there's no consequences. So you have two choices. You can pick up the dirty socks and put them in the hamper and wash them yourself, or you can leave them there. Same thing applies to the plate. This is the craziest thing I've ever heard, but I did it. I let the socks sit there and they mounted up and got. He left to go to work. I got the Febreze out and I sprayed him because I didn't want to have to smell him. But one morning he was running late for work and he came to me and he was screaming, where are my socks? And I politely walked in next to the chair and picked up two and I handed them to him. And so when I did that, he looked at me and said, well, you need to wash them. I said, but they need to be in the hamper. And I did the same thing with the dishes. It was great. Like we'd use the dishes and they would sit there and they started to stack up. And I kept enough dishes in a separate place for me and the kids. Right. And so eventually all the dishes were used except for the plates that me and the kids used. So dinner came. Hey, dinner's done. I fix the kid's plate. I fix my plate. We go another, and he starts looking for plates. And he said, where are the plates? Where's the dishes? And I walked over to the next to the chair and I pointed them. I said, they're right here. Why aren't they washed? Because they weren't in the kitchen. So that's the analogy of enabling and consequences. And if we continue to do and make excuses, they're not going to do it. Why should they? So you have to be willing to be out of your comfort zone in a minute to let them have the consequences for their own actions. That's a boundary you create. If you want to do all that, then don't complain about it. If you don't, then let it sit there and you'll figure it out. But there's a consequence for it. And yes, he was mad. And yes, he yelled. But you know what? He didn't get mad and didn't yell for the 5 or 6 days it took for the socks to pile up, probably 2 weeks, or the 5 or 6 days that it took for the dishes to pile up. We didn't fight at all over those things those days. It was just the day that I left them. You know what happened after that? His socks found their way to the hamper, and his dishes found their way to the kitchen. So, what I'm telling you is when you create your boundary, if you want to enable them, that's on you. So make sure you think about that when you're setting your boundaries. Confronting them about their behavior and that they need to change. Remember, boundaries are personal. Their actions are personal. So when we go in and do this, you can't go in and say, you need to pick up around the house. You need to watch the kids more. I need you to stop playing your video game. I need you to stop with the beer all the time. You need to, you need to, you need to. It becomes nagging and they shut off. And it's like, whack, 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 whack. Nope. They're accountable for their own action. And how we talk to them is a big issue. So there's no consequences there because we already fix it. So you can't do that. You need to be more responsible. I can remember this was great. So my children's biological dad, when they were little, would come and get them on occasion, and I mean rare occasion. And one day he finally showed up to get the kids, and they were going to spend the night with him. And I packed up their stuff, and he was late, which doesn't really matter, and I sent them off with him. Well, about 2 hours into that, he calls and says, I am bringing these kids back. I can't deal with it, and my new girlfriend can't deal with it. I said, I'm sorry. I'm not at home. Now, I'm sitting in my living room, but I wasn't telling him that. I'm not home. You were supposed to keep them. You can bring them back in the morning. 6 o'clock in the morning, he's sitting on my front step. But he's got to be have his own consequences. And so he took them. He kept them one night. Never did it again, but he did keep them one night. The next thing we learn, especially in a relationship or a marriage, in a marriage, it's this big deal about the two will become one and they'll be one in the flesh, and we hear it. I now pronounce you man and wife. You're now a unit. You're now a thing. We light this unity candle with the two flames, and we light the candle, and they blow the individual ones out. That's not the way it works in the real world. We are still individual people. I have my individuality. Carl has his individuality. Sorry, his famous words, and I so hate it when he's right, but he's right. But please don't tell him. Is I am me, he is he, and we are we. So I have to be me, and I have to have my own boundaries. What can I accept? What can I do? What am I willing to do? And he has to be him. Same thing. Together, we are we. And that is one of the hardest things for me to get. For 10 months, he's been preaching this to me, and all of a sudden, it was like a light bulb went on. So here's the issue. I am me. I happen to have a liver thing going on. Y'all know that. That's mine. We together go through this journey. But no matter how much he wants to, he can't take that away from me. He has PTSD. That is his. Will I stand beside him and walk through this journey with him? Absolutely. But no matter how much I want to, I can't take that away from him. So we've had some big arguments about downtime and unwinding and what we do. For Carl, his way of turning off is to sit there and just being quiet or be focused and not have anything going on. And that's how he gets his mind around what he's doing. That's him. That's what works for him. For me, I pour myself into something else and distract myself. Well, it's taken us a long time to learn that I can't do it the way he does it, and he can't do it the way I want. So while we now have addressed the fact that we have individuality, we're individuals. Now that we've done that, we have to have a we time. So we now have an agreement that at a certain time, I don't answer the phone. At a certain time, I don't do Facebook. At a certain time, I don't do this. We have our time. So he can be him, I can be me, and there is a time we do us together. And that is a boundary that we've created that works for us. You're going to hear a lot. You can't lose your individuality. Absolutely cannot do that. So there's things that you absolutely cannot do that. You cannot control other people's feelings. You can't. You may want them to be happy, but you cannot make them happy. You can't control that. You can't control when they get angry. You can't control their attitudes. You can't control their behaviors. You can't control their choices. And you can't control their values. By doing that, you're violating their boundaries. By them doing that to us, they're violating our boundaries. So you have to understand that when what is in your control, what can we do as individuals? I can't make Carl be happy. Do I want him happy? Yes. But when he's having a date or he's in a mood, I can't make him happy. I want him happy. Does it hurt that he can't sleep at night? Yeah, it does. And we talked about that last night, and he said, but you can't fix that for me. That works for me because of this events. And I had to learn to let that go. I couldn't be upset because he wasn't sleeping. It hurt me to see him do that, but it wasn't hurting him. So, see where I'm going with this? We have a dear friend who's on one of our support groups who her and her fiance had a difference of opinion over politics. And it became this, well, you can't see it my way, and you can't see it my way, and you can't see it my way, and this back and forth. And you're not educated, and you're not this, and I'm more educated. And it became this conflict. And what came out last night is she said, I didn't realize his back history and how that affected his views. It doesn't make his views right or wrong, it makes them his views. So when we create these boundaries, I can't change his values. I can't change his attitude. I can't change his behavior. I can change me and how I react to it. So that's kind of important to really understand. You have to take responsibility for your own feelings. This is tough, 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 tough. How do you feel when they do? Now, I'm not saying how when if I asked you, well, how does that make you feel? Well, I don't like it when he drinks, when he avoids me, when he yells, when he whatever. No, you don't like that. And I didn't say that. Your own feelings. How does that make you feel? So, um, drinking is a big issue for a lot of veterans. And it's I don't like it when he drinks. He gets angry, he does this, he gets this, he does that. Okay, think about it in a different term. When he drinks, I feel this. I feel shut out. I feel hurt. I feel angry. I feel whatever. That you can own. Your feelings you can own. But you can't own when he is doing this. That is him or them. That is not you. You can own your feelings. You can't own their behavior. So when we set our boundaries, you've got to remember what is within your boundary, your feelings. So when we communicate, it can't be, I hate it when you drink. You need to stop. You need to do more around the house. You don't engage with your children. Instead of, honey, you know, yesterday my feelings were really hurt. And I felt sad because when Johnny tried to climb up in your lap for a hug, you told him to go away. And that hurt me to see the disappointment in his eyes. Now you flipped around the whole thing, and they are way more likely to be receptive when you talk like that and when you take ownership for your feelings and you don't make accusations about you need to hug Johnny. It's a huge difference in what's within your boundaries. Because telling him to hug Johnny is not in your boundary. It's in telling him that you felt hurt because you watched the disappointment in your child's eyes when this happened, that's within your boundary. It's your feeling. It's your sadness. It's you observing the disappointment. And it hurt you and it made you sad and it made you angry. Now, again, when you're in PTSD and this is kind of going on and you watch this conflict unfold, it's so easy to yell and say, well, all he did was want a hug. And now we've escalated, right? So a lot of times when you're talking to somebody with PTSD, it's better to let some space happen between the event and the discussion. It is better to let space happen between the event and the discussion. It takes them off the defense. So it's much better to even an hour or two, Johnny's out of the room, things have kind of calmed down, and say, you know, I noticed something and it really kind of hurt my feelings and made me sad. Now you're not creating conflict. You're taking ownership for how you feel and you're putting it back into their court to deal with their boundaries. And it makes a huge difference in how that communication happens. And when you start criticizing, they shut down. It just happens. We all do. This has been very hard for me to be able to sit there with Carl and say, my feelings were hurt because of, or I feel like you're pulling away from me. I'm hurt because I feel like you're pulling away from me. Or I'm sad because I watch what's going on. It used to be so easy for me to, one, just kind of ignore it, and so what happened was is that he would blow up or have his moment or whatever it was, and I would just sit there and let it go on, and I would ignore it, and we go back to it would happen over and over again. And the same thing happened with me in the way I did things for him. And so we kind of learned that he'll say to me, I get in a place when you do this. Or I'll say to him, honey, when you talk, my feelings were hurt and I felt really belittled when you talked to me like this or when you said this. And it was specific statements. Then it becomes me, not him, but you're conveying the same message. And so we have really done much better on this. And I'm not saying we won't backslide because we will. We all do. It's just something that happens. So, but it's in the phrasing. And again, you have to be clear with that. You got to be clear with your desires. When you're communicating with them, you can't just go in and say, I'm tired of you working too much, or I'm tired of you not picking up after yourself, or I'm sick and tired of you playing that video game all the time. Change your, why are you tired of them playing the video game all the time? Why? Think about your why. Why are you tired of them playing the video game? Because they don't spend time with you? Because they shut you off? Because you're having to clean up stuff and that makes you angry? Because they're not spending time with your children? So don't, the video game is the issue, is not really the issue. It's it's there. But why are you angry? Why are you resentful that they're playing the video game? That's within your boundary. Unplugging the video game is not. So be clear in your desire. Honey, look, I'd really like to spend more time with you. Or us as a family, spend more time together. But when you're playing that video game all the time, we feel shut out. So you've said the same thing. Don't play the video game all the time. But that's in his boundary. But when you change the way you communicate it to, we feel, we would like, it's different. The other big thing, and I want to wrap this up quick, but I just wanted to touch on this. And like I said, we'll do more in depth by the end of the weekend. They'll be on YouTube. So there is a limit on what you can give. There is only so much you can give. And you have to be aware of what you can give. And you can't give more than what you got. So when all these people in your life are like, I need you to do, can you do this for me? I want this. I want that. I need this. There's a limit on what you can do. You have to find that balance. That's within your boundary. You have to be able to be the one to say, I know you really want this, but I can't do all of this. I can do this. Or I know this is important to you and you want this, but I just can't do it. I have, I'm overwhelmed. I need me time. It doesn't make you selfish, it makes you honest. So you have to remember there's a limit to what you can give. And that is critical in setting your boundaries. I know that, and this is something we just so talked about last night. And again, I apologize for the links not being correct. I am fixing them now. I think we know the problem. For Zoom, it was critical in our conversation last night. Setting boundaries is incredibly important. Learning how to communicate is incredibly important. Bringing them into a situation where they are sharing our life with us and having a dialogue is incredibly important. When you're honest about your feelings and your feelings are doing this, are feeling this way because of their action, you're now not making it about them and putting blame on them. You're outlining what's available for you. That's the first step in getting healthy, digging those foundations. All too often we say, why should I be the one to change? Because the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over and over again and expecting different results. So when we do the same thing over and over and over again and nothing changes, that makes it easy. Just a little food for thought, just a little bit of boundaries and what's helped us. And like I said in the beginning, what works for me may not work for you. Learning to establish what's best for you. We all have our own dynamics. We all have our own stuff. But this is about self-preservation. And every single book I've read talks about making time for you. And every single one of us say, we don't have time. Making time for you is an evolution. And protecting you by putting up your fence is making. And it's a slow process. You do it one step at a time. And it will make your life, not just with your veteran, with your children better, with your parents better, with your friends better, with your work relationships better. Learning to create that boundary will only help you as a human and you as a person. And it is very important. And I'm learning every single day. I am not an expert. I fail every day. And I just get back up and ride again because that's all we can do. Thank y'all for being here. I'm Stacy. This is Walking in My Shoes. I'll get all this stuff posted today. Today is actually work day. I'll get all this stuff posted. On Monday morning, there will be the rest of the more intense videos on more specific sections on YouTube. If you subscribe to Loving My Veterans YouTube channel, you'll get the premiere, and we'll send those out first to y'all. So you'll get them to be able before they go out for everybody else. Um, please have a great day and a blessed day. There'll be another dust off posted today to our website from Jeremy. This is light at the end of the tunnel, light in the tunnel. It's a very powerful insight from Jeremy as to what our veterans go through. Again, please feel free to send us a message, especially if you want some one-on-one. I don't mind doing one-on-ones at all. Please send us a message. We can Zoom and talk and just whatever we need to do. We'll be happy to do that. We have our live Let's Talk. I will get all those links fixed on Thursday night. We've talked about setting up some other times, so if you want those, we are happy to do that as well. Big news on the horizon. Today, my interview with Janine Lutz will be available on YouTube. She is a fabulous woman. And next week, we're doing an interview with Soldier Hard. Some of his music and what he's been through have been amazing and have been inspirational. So, y'all have a blessed day. We love you so much. Thank you for being part of our community. I know this has gone longer than usual. Um, and I will talk to y'all soon. Bye.